Welcome to the Leading Real Change podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jacqueline Kerr, an expert in workplace culture change. From my unique background in behavior science, public health, and community advocacy, I help corporate leaders with evidence-based individual, team, and organizational change to create thriving workplace cultures for all. In the Leading Real Change podcast, I interview dedicated and passionate change makers about their careers, how they lead change, and what leaders can do today to make a difference, to build healthy, inclusive workplace cultures for all. I'm excited to share these examples of real workplace change with you. You'll learn about effective strategies that are working and how to overcome real barriers to change that challenge us every day. I hope you'll feel inspired and more confident to keep leading change in your workplace. Please share this podcast with other HR, DEI, or ERG leaders who you know are working hard but are struggling to have an impact and need more support to effectively create a thriving workplace culture for all today.
My name is Kelly Robinson. I am one of 4 children, and I'm third in line. I have 2 big sisters and a little brother. So I was that one that was always like clawing to get up to the top to get some attention, right? That brings us to present day. I'm an entrepreneur now. I have a son who's almost 13, Eric, and I'm a single mother. And I have a puppy named Buster, who is 11 months old. And my first dog at 46 years old, my first dog. I'm learning a lot day to day. And then I have a business, which is PKR, Panna Knows Recruiting. And we are partnering with our clients to manage all or part of their strategic sourcing.
Great, thank you. So you've got a lot on your plate. How do you manage it all? This is what mums want to hear. They don't necessarily want to hear that you're doing it all right or getting it right. We talk about the mess here and the struggles we've gone through, just so that other women in your situation can see themselves and know they're not alone. Yeah, with that spirit, please tell us a little bit about how you make it all.
Yeah, it's not perfect. I'm not managing well anyway. I do my best, right? So I make efforts and I pay special attention to certain things in my life. My health is really important, my son, and my business. So those are the 3 things that I'm always trying to focus and balance, really. And it's not easy, and I don't always do it right. And I learn from those mistakes, which I think is the most valuable. I'm tired a lot. I'm 46. I think I said that. I might say it again 100 times, but like I'm tired. It's just happening as I'm getting older. I'm getting more just exhausted. I'm trying to focus on my health, which is eating healthy and getting moving so that I can have energy from exercise and things like that. And I still try to, shove all these other things in from time to time, like making sure I'm like reading or just doing all of these things that I want to do for myself. And it's hard, right? We all find ourselves focused as women. I think we often find ourselves focused on our children, not realizing that the true benefit to the child is when we take care of ourselves, right? And when they see that, because they see a healthy parent, healthy couples, healthy marriages, right? When you pay attention to yourself and to each other, that's what kids need to see. So I don't always do it well. I just have to figure out how to do better every time I make a mistake or learn from it and not put so much pressure. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves. And when I try not to do that, my decisions feel easier. If I have to miss a hockey game or I have to miss the walk or whatever it is.
Interesting. So when you do reduce the expectations, you feel that relief. And actually, that was one piece of advice one of my coaching guests gave, which is if we can change those expectations, that is what we feel is relief, because it just feels so great to let go and realize that so many things that we think are important aren't, if we can filter them through a different mindset. Tell me a little bit then about when and why you started paying attention to burnout in particular, either for yourself or again with your staff. Tell us a little bit about your employees and how you help them with burnout too.
Yeah, and one leads to the other, I find. For me anyway. So I was a managing partner of another company for a long time, for 13 years. And working for someone else, when you're that third child in line, you're always trying to, what do I need to do to make this person happy, to please this, blah, 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 blah. So you put this pressure on yourself to be seen as, I've got it. I've got all of this. I'm doing all of this. Notice me. Truly, I think that's where it came from, right? So I would work all the time and I had a lot on my plate. And there was just a lot going on. So it was nonstop. So my son would be that kid that was like, he was 4 and I'm picking him up at 6 o'clock when it closes, right? Or I'm getting the call at 6:02. Are you coming? So that was me because I was always just so entrenched in work. And then I started to realize much later, my son's almost 13. When I got divorced, he was about 6 or 7. And so that's when I started to realize, okay, I'm here now and I want to put him on the bus and I want to take him off of the bus and I want to be part of all of that. And I don't want to be that mom that's like dropping him off before school at 6 or 7 and then picking him up again at 6 at night. And I started to be part of that. And then we would have dinner and he would do his sports or whatever. And then I would go back to working. That was okay. And that worked for a while. When I started my own business, which is almost 4 years ago, that's when I decided I don't have pressure on myself other than just from myself, but there's no one else that I have to say, oh, I worked tonight. What I'm doing is prioritizing what I need to do. So emails, all that other stuff, I'm not into all that. What I do is I've got my 3 things to do for the day. These are my focus and this is what I'm doing. And so I started exercising and eating healthy and I had more time and energy for my son. I stopped working out at night unless I absolutely had to. So this whole idea of, yes, it's in my blood to work like that. But when I was able to see how I was losing the time and I was in an unhealthy place for myself, I felt like I had an opportunity. There were just these things in my life that happened, like the trauma of losing my father and then losing my job and then getting a divorce. And then there was just these things that led up to like, all right, let's just figure out what's going to work here. What do I need to focus on to keep me balanced and healthy and happy and the people around me that will directly affect? So that for me is how I started the business. And I think the pressure I had on me made me put pressure on other people before. And so now the only pressure I have is myself. And I know how I wanted to be treated before that I wasn't, and how I wanted my life and my energy and everything to flow and feel. So I'm able to do that now. And so I always say to people, you know, when people seem off a bit, like they're snappy or reactive, there's usually something going on. And it usually doesn't have anything to do with you. They have something going on. And so you have to pay attention to these things. And when you see them, you say to them, hey, do you need a break? What can I do for you? So there's little things like that, like just taking note. But there's also being a role model and setting expectations. And they know, they all have access to my calendar. So they can see that there are things that I need to do during the workday. And they'll see that I will do that. If it has something to do with my son or my health or something, I'll do it. And I allow them the same, right? So I'm leading by example, but they also see I'm working hard and I'm productive and I'm getting things done and I'm focused and I'm not doing nothing. So it's a balance. And so I lead by example, but I also set their expectations when they come in to work. That is how we work. You're going to have some times where you work more hours. You're going to have times where you work less hours. You're an adult. You have autonomy. As long as you're productive, you make your own schedule. No one's going to ask you. That's just not how we work. But we also pay attention to people and tell them when they need a break.
So that's great. You're setting those like institutional guardrails. We always think about that as performance, all these things. Here's the minimum you do. And we never say, no, there's a maximum too. And as you say, people that are wired to work hard, or like you say, feeling that need to impress and let people know, yes, I'm working. Yes, I'm working, as a part of your self-value, yeah, we need help. We need help to be given that permission. And that's what a coach can also do too, is give you permission to stop. So I think it's even better when it's a manager or a CEO able to do that. And I love that you really understood that shift in your mind too, that now you didn't have to impress someone else. You didn't have to go back on email to impress someone else. That just sounds, yeah, that does sound so freeing, because I think that's one thing that I sat down and said is, okay, of all the activities I do, which am I doing out of obligation versus love because I actually love doing that thing? And it was so few. And it just felt so horrible to be working under this, oh, because I have to, or because it's expected, not through enjoyment. So it's interesting to think that in some ways you created your own business to help manage your burnout. And I think that's such a great message to hear, because I know lots of entrepreneurs struggle, and lots of people when they're starting up, if it's that startup mentality. But I love that you're actually creating these guardrails to make sure that doesn't happen.
It's prioritizing. You don't need to do something just to do it, right? Just because someone says you should check your email for 20 minutes in the morning, you should check your email. That's not what I'm doing. I know what I need to focus on, and that's what I'm focused on. So if I miss an email, I miss an email. It's not the end of the world. If someone really needs me, they're going to call me. They're going to text me. They're going to find me. Because if that's a priority to them, they're going to do it. My priority might be different. So everyone has their own priorities and boundaries. And when someone says, oh, I was working last night, I say, I don't want you to work. I don't want you to work. So don't work. Don't. I don't want anyone working at night. If you have to work at night, let's rebalance your day. Let's look at what you're doing. Let's look at your priorities. I don't want someone working at night because they feel like I had to get back to every email. I had to get back to every blah, blah, blah. I had to do this. I had to do this. We're not just checking stuff off to check stuff off. Although people like myself love checking things off a list.
It sounds so good. You have, like you really clearly said, you have your 3 priorities for the day. And I think that's so important, because we're looking at data that's showing that we're spending almost 70% of the day working on how to work instead of actually being productive and having focus. And again, having those interrupted times where you're able to focus. These are all such important things to prevent burnout. So it really sounds like that's partly where you're leading as a role model, but you're also actively giving directions to say, let's review how you're working when you're working and your priorities.
Yeah, I think it's validating people, right? So it's also making sure that people know I really appreciate what you do. And it's interesting because when I say that to people, a lot of times my eyes will well up because it's such a feeling of, and sometimes I don't feel it. My chief of staff is amazing. And so sometimes it's like a Friday and it's the end of the day and I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful that I had her because I got so much done. And I'll send her a message and I'm welling up now because I'm so thankful to have someone that's helping me. It's just about making sure they know that, because if they don't know that, they might be wanting to impress or like work harder, and that puts stress on them and their families. So at the end of the day, it's taking care of yourself. Once you take care of yourself and like you're worthy of taking care of yourself, and I mess up all the time. I mess up all the time on that. I miss exercising, or I decide to eat something gross or whatever. So by gross, really good, like fried, right? So it's all of these things. If you try to keep your focus on taking care of yourself, which sounds selfish, but as soon as you're more self-aware and recognize that, other people do too. I don't know a better way to explain it. And maybe it sounds like hokey, but I also think as I get older, I won't say my age again, but as I get older, I do feel that I can see the little things that are really not important. They're not. If I don't get back to an email, and I don't know, I keep saying email, but just because it clogs up your day. But if I don't get back to an email, I don't get back to it.
Great, great. You're setting boundaries and you're really focusing. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more of the details of how you're trying to, because again, role modeling is so important, but also, like you say, actually expressing appreciation. And I love that you feel this gratitude, because I do think, and I'll say it for myself too, a lot of people doing businesses feel weighed down by that and feel such a struggle. I really appreciate that you're feeling the opposite. You're feeling gratitude in the help you're getting and that you've been able to focus all week. Because again, I think that's the thing too. When we focus, we come out of the week feeling good, feeling productive. And of course, we're meeting our targets as a business. But like you say, it's all that other sort of noise that gets in the way. And then we would come out of a week feeling unproductive and exhausted versus actually having achieved something. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about some of the examples of things that you're doing for your staff and you think that other companies could think about doing for their staff.
There's a lot of things that we do formally, and then there's also just informally, right? So informally, people know your kid's first day of school, take them to school, your child is sick, do that, whatever it is that you need, that's a priority. And so we'll say that and we'll recognize things. Those are the informal where like you see something and you're like, you need a break. Formally, we do things like sometimes we'll have yoga together, or we'll have meditation together, or we'll have done fitness from time to time too. The other thing is we do every Friday all year round, we close at 2. And I don't want anyone on. And I tell clients that it's not a secret. Like we'll say, okay, our team is closed at 2. So, they'll monitor if something's really urgent, but for the most part, it's going to be Monday that they'll get back to you. They love that I set expectations with the clients because that gives them. So in my last company, like we would close sometimes, but we didn't want to tell the client. So here it's like very transparent. And in my mind, if the client is not comfortable with that, it might not be a good fit for our company because it's employee first here, which only benefits them. I truly believe it only benefits them in the long run. So those are some of the things that we do. I think there's probably more informal things. We have a daily time slot that we call shooting the shit. Excuse my French, but it is a time slot to get on and talk about you. And that's it. Personal stuff. We're not talking about clients. We're not talking about work. That's it. And I'm on my treadmill for 30 minutes. I start a Slack call. Whoever wants to jump on. Summers are really popular. Like a lot more people get on. It's at 8:30 to 9 right now. So it's hard with schools because everyone has school aged, mostly elementary school. So that's the time when they're getting dropped off. So that actually makes it a little bit more difficult now. So sometimes we'll do like a pop-up at noon or something so people can join us. But it's great. We've had kids, especially in the summer, kids get on, they talk. We know all the kids, we engage, we know the husbands, we know everything. But it's just a time to interact with each other on a human level. That's really important. And that helps them to understand that we do care about them and their kids. We see their kids, or we talk to them, the husbands, the wives, the whatever. Those are some of the things that we really try to do.
Those are great examples. I love to, again, the limitations on time are so clear and that you're so transparent about it with the clients. I think that's really important. And actually having informal times, but formally recognized times to connect informally. That's so important to provide those connection opportunities, especially with remote work. But also, just as you say, it's when you actually want people to bring their whole selves to work. That's so important that they have time to actually talk about things that make them who they are outside of work. But also your example of your calendar as well. That's open and that it's clear that you've got kid activities in there. These are great. These are all examples that definitely are recommended in the literature for creating that first base of psychological safety, which is it's okay to come as yourself to work. And yeah, that's definitely one of those first starts. So any other things about how you also work towards either rewarding behaviors? Like when you think about things like merit reviews or promotions, these are things that, again, we focus on it being more time and more tasks versus, okay, more quality in the time you've got, or more contribution to team well-being in the time you've got. So do you have any thoughts about other ways that we can almost flipping the whole script on how we think about motivating employees and keeping them engaged?
So we have a very, I'll say, agile company because there's a team of 20-ish. So there's a lot of need to flex and grow. Things change. Okay, your duties now, like what we've seen is this is really valuable. Let's focus on that. So people do have an opportunity to do that, like to change and grow all the time. And it doesn't necessarily mean title, money, hours, more work, less work, nothing like that. It's just about what is core in your role that's really important to the impact of the business, right? Whatever the objectives or goals are that we're working on. So there's a lot of opportunity, right? And that for them to get exposure to different things. I spend time with them trying to understand what they like, what they don't like, what they want to do, what they'd like exposure to. So that way we can give them opportunities like maybe special projects and time with other things that they want to do so that they feel rewarded. From time to time, I'll do bonuses or things like that. And I've been known to try to support personal goals with if someone really wants to get back to the gym. So I'll go buy the gym membership for 6 months and tell them they have to go at 12 o'clock every day. And we don't want to hear from them from 12 to 1. And that's it. I've bought bikes and treadmills for people and things like that, and then give them the parameters because I just feel like that helps them in their job, not necessarily skill set, but it just helps them overall with feeling good. And then maybe they can take on more or offer different perspective, different skill sets, different opportunities to grow their own position. If they take an interest in, I keep coming back to this, but if they're taking an interest in the business, it's because they feel that the business has taken an interest in them. And that helps without even maybe consciously thinking that way, but they're feeling good about work and business and about their job. And they understand how their job affects the big picture of the business, but also of their life. So when they can understand that and they feel good about what they're doing, they want to do more, which just helps them grow. And then we can formalize things more. And I'm not really big. We're a small company, so I'm not really big on like titles, but I'll say, what would you like to be called? Because I know that's important to them. And it's important to me, but not as important as it is to them.
I love all these examples. It's often what I'm drawing on from recommendations. So job crafting, what you're doing is saying, yeah, what are your strengths and how can you use those in your own personal development to create more? And I think when you help people focus on their health, then they're also focused on their own development too, like shifting that focus to saying, hey, I want you to focus on you, not just your own health, but your own career and what you're going to get out of it. Again, it's such a shift to, okay, what are you doing for the company? And even though you're in a small to business, managers running small units, that they can think about using the same sort of techniques that you're using at a whole business level as a manager of a team. And I think the other thing there that you're also doing is connecting what they're doing in their job to the business outcomes, the impact. And that's something also, again, that we know is so important to prevent burnout, because people want to, one, have a lot of role clarity. And there's some new data came out in September about how clearly role clarity impacts people's desire to stay and not leave, and how it impacts burnout, but also then how that role connects to the purpose of the business, and really understanding that is what motivates people. They want fulfillment in their job and they want to know that they're contributing to something important. So again, I think that's what's such an important part of role clarity, is not just what is it I expect of you, but how does it connect to this bigger purpose? So I love that you're just enacting all these pieces of advice that I'm always writing about.
I don't always do it well, but it's something I like to always try to be thinking about. But you can tell when you're interacting with an employee and they're trying to get better clarity on their job, like by asking questions, you can tell, okay, they're not connecting yet. Why that is important to the bigger picture because I haven't been able to communicate it properly. So I have one person right now whose role is so important. And it took us a long time to get there. And I think now that person is starting to click like, okay, I see it. This is actually really important. It just took me a while to say, oh, you know what? I have to explain like the bigger picture. It's not just about that role. It's like the bigger picture. So they feel like they're making an impact. It's not always perfect. There's lots of times when I haven't been able to figure that out.
So what are some of the barriers that you face when you think about trying to implement this? So thinking about the managers might be concerned about, what's helping you do this, but what gets in the way that you've had to overcome. So like you gave an example there, sometimes it just takes time and additional clarity and communication, but any others that can help other leaders think through what they're going to have to do?
Each person is different. So it's not a one size fits all. So I could tell someone how I do things, but I also do things differently for each person because they're motivated by different things. So I think the biggest thing someone can do is sit down and listen to someone and try to understand them as a person, as an individual. So I have a trademark called the Unculture, and that's exactly what it's about. It's about creating a culture by bringing together all of these other cultures. So it's like a mishmash. It's not really one culture. Like it is what it is because of the uniqueness of each person. And people are different. So you can create reward systems. Not everyone cares about that. Maybe they don't want money. Maybe they want recognition in front of their peers. So it's more about understanding individuals and what makes them tick and what makes them feel challenged and rewarded and what they want from their role. And so then, of course, making sure you have the right people in those places, which is easier when you're at my size company. Easier and harder, I guess. But when you have a big company, it's harder to affect change. So it's really about trying to focus on yourself and your team and how that team can affect. And what you need to do is dig into them. What is it that they want? Do they understand what their job is? So it's going to look different. I would just say my only advice is to spend time with people and help. If you take care of your people, Richard Branson always says, take care of your people, they're going to take care of your clients. So my philosophy is I don't have to ever think about my clients if my people feel good and trained and motivated and empowered to do things.
Great. That's true. And I think it also speaks to this transition that we're making of managers as coaches, right? Versus that old style management of here's what you're going to do and the authoritarian manager. Now it's manager as coach, and a coach has to do all the things you're describing. You have to be a good listener. You have to help the person find their own way to the solutions. So yeah, there's so many examples in what you're giving of that new style of management that I think's also so important. And I love how you really connect it to your clients. It's almost like it takes a whole piece off your plate because you're focusing on the right thing that has then the consequences you want.
Yeah, and it's when you see things, employees that might be like, you can tell they're frustrated or whatever, it's good to stop and ask them, like, what can I do for you? I can see that maybe we should table this conversation, but our work conversation, professional conversation, but what can I do for you? Is the way that we're conducting this meeting frustrating? What's the best way for you? What can I do better for you or differently? I feel like that's really important. Back to your point though, I think it's leadership versus management, right? So management is really like someone has a specific project goal, whatever, and so they're going to lead that team with managing and delegating. And you could be a manager and a leader, but the leader's role is to motivate. And again, you can do both. You can be a leader and a manager, but the leader's role is to motivate and ask the right questions and make sure they understand. That's the coach, the leadership coach piece is asking the right questions to make sure that the person, like you said, they come to that kind of decision on their own. It's like therapy, right? So I go to therapy and I'm the best therapist ever. And she will ask questions and it's, oh, yep. I just needed someone to ask those questions of me. because it helped me put things together for myself.
And I think also questions are such a great way to give feedback too. I know that I remember being in this situation where I had two people giving me feedback, for example, on my TEDx talk when I was preparing that. And one just jumped in and said all these things, and the other asked me questions. And of course, my whole body and my whole response, everything felt so different to the person that asked me questions. I was so open to those ideas, and it got me thinking, and I was ready to go, yeah, how can I say that differently? So again, I think that was, for me, it was such a good reminder to try and use questions too.
It's a softer approach.
Right. And again, like you say, it also helps you come to the answers yourself instead of being so directive. And again, that's a skill you want to develop in people, is their ability to problem solve and find those answers. So I think one of the real keys here is also thinking just generally about emotional intelligence, which is your ability to self-manage, but the ability to manage yourself in relation to other people and to help other people. Like, it's awareness of other people's. So like, you're able to notice when someone's frustrated. And you mentioned hiring a therapist. So do you have any just insights into where you got to that place in terms of developing some of this emotional intelligence? Was it very intentional for you, or did it come as a result of kind of the journey that you described at the beginning?
Yeah, it came as a result of all of these traumas. And I was unhealthy, I was overweight, I wasn't in a good place. So I wasn't as open-minded as I wanted to be. Like, feedback was hard, and a lot of these things just clicked for me in the moment that I lost my job. It just clicked for me. Okay, you know what? I've got to focus on myself, and I've got to do this stuff for me. Because if I'm constantly trying to do it for other people, there's nothing left for me. And I'm miserable, and it's not helping me as a person. I don't feel good when I'm getting ready to go to dinner or something, and I'm like, I can't find clothes to fit. No one wants to do that. You want to feel good. You want to look good. All these little things just was like, you know what? I slowly started to think I need to do better for myself. And maybe I'm not as self-aware as I should be. And so maybe I need to go meet a therapist, talk to a therapist, and just see if this person could give me feedback. And I've been with the same therapist for many years now. And what she does really well is she asks those questions, and she really makes me think. And she could just give me her feedback and tell me what to do, but that's not how she is. And she knows me really well now. But that was like me trying to seek out, how can I be better? So there was enough self-awareness to know that I could probably use that, but I feel like I've gained so much more since then, because now I can ask some of those questions to myself. So I'm on a Zoom and I can see someone feels frustrating, and I think to myself, what am I potentially doing? Okay, I'm probably rushing through this Zoom. Let me take a step back. Let me make sure first that this person knows your work is phenomenal. I'm rushed because I'm rushed, and I'm sorry if that's making you feel like that. Your work is phenomenal. So it's just about, in the moment, making sure you, which we all forget, is a lot of times we think things and we forget to say them. And it's usually the grateful or the thankful, like those kinds of things. And that's what I think the therapy and like taking care of myself has reminded me to do. I may be making them feel a little pressure because I'm feeling pressure, or I'm rushed because I'm behind. So I don't want to do that. I need to be very conscious of how I can make others feel, especially as a CEO. It's different as a peer sometimes, but when you're feeling like, oh my gosh, like I just don't want anyone to ever feel like that, because I remember feeling like that and I don't want that to happen. Still happens, and I have to circle back and hit it directly and apologize. Accountability is not a weakness. So people think taking accountability in front of your team is a weakness. It's not at all. It's showing them that it is okay to make mistakes, and we all make mistakes all the time, like all the time. As long as we grow and learn from it, we're good.
Those are such important elements. And I really appreciate these examples you've provided today, because it sounds so doable. And particularly thinking about that sort of mindfulness going into meetings, I think a lot of people think about practices like meditation or whatever, and they say do it for 10 minutes at the start of the day or at the end of the day. But actually there's some great work around mindfulness just in that minute or two before getting into a meeting. And then you actually come to the meeting with this open mindset to say, okay, I'm going to be really present. I'm going to notice what people are feeling. Like you say, I'm going to step back and take a breath. And even today, you're rushing into our podcast, so you were taking some time. And it was so funny. I had this meeting with somebody at UCSF, and I was the same. I was like, I got to get to the toilet. So I logged in, but I turned my camera off and I went to the toilet. And then I got back, and the guy was just coming there too. And I was like, oh, thank goodness you're a few minutes late too. I needed to go to the restroom. And he was like, oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you, we always give a 5-minute leeway in the start of a meeting to give people time to get ready to actually start the meeting. And so that's why he wasn't there, because he was using his 5 minutes as it had been designed to be. So yeah, I love those types of examples where we're actually admitting, okay, yes, we do. We need a little bit more time before meetings, not just to deal with the bathroom things, but also so that we come to that meeting, like you say, not in a rush, a little bit more mindful of who we want to be in that moment.
I find myself getting very entrenched in meetings too. Thank goodness for my chief of staff who will like text me or send me something and she'll be like, you have another meeting. Because I feel like I try to be interested in what I'm doing and I'm really passionate about it. So I get into these conversations or meetings and it's hard for me to keep an eye on like time. So yeah, that you need that.
Okay, so let's then wrap up today. What are you thinking about other things you want to prioritize or get better on as you go forward, or messages for other mums, for other companies out there about how to start making this shift, or just even one specific thing that they could do today to make a start to change things?
I would say to a mom, she needs to have time for herself. And it doesn't matter what that is. It could be 10 minutes of reading every day. It could be 10 minutes of walking, whatever it is, you do it. You make yourself 1% better. I forget what I was listening to a Blinkist recently, and it was like, just do one thing. And so I literally on my sheet for the day where like I go in the night before, I'll show you it. It literally says 1%. So 1%, if I do one thing more than I didn't do yesterday, I give that 1% and make myself 1% better. So one little thing. It could be walking 5 minutes. It doesn't even have to be 10 minutes. Reading, stretching. I'm not saying you've got to go for a 10-mile bike ride or a run. These little things make a big difference. Just breathing, like just sitting with no phone in your hand, looking out in nature, or just something for yourself. You can't do for others if you're not doing for yourself. And it's not selfish, it's just smart. It's a fact. It is what it is.
Thanks so much for listening today. I hope the podcast brings you fresh ideas, renewed confidence, and energy to keep leading change. If you need a partner in these efforts, I can help you effectively build a thriving workplace culture for all. I'll help you overcome the real barriers to change you face every day and help you lead real change with evidence-based solutions. In particular, I want to work with passionate leaders who have tried and failed, because I know you have what it takes, and your experience will help you clearly recognize the difference I can make. For a free consultation today, please visit my website at www.leading-real-change.com. That's www.leadingrealchange.com.
Control, you're a fighter. Push the limits and see it, you're already there. Told you we going higher. Ain't no stopping us, we're going in for the win. And we're gonna celebrate. Then we're gonna do it all over again. eyes feel the power. Everything that you need and more is within. 'Cause this is the hour. We're gonna give it our all and then win. And we're gonna celebrate. Then we're gonna do